Hi again. So today's awakening, it wasn't really an awakening. It was probably more of an awakening like later in life, but it was something that was happening like all of my life. And I'm sure it happens with many other people. And that is that the world is not just a physical place. It's not just all the things that you can touch and you can experience with your senses. There is spirit and energy. There is sound beyond the audible sound, and there are beings that you cannot see with your physical eyes. You can interact with spirit on like any level. There's spirit in everything, in this world. Even in the water bottle, there's spirit in there too, like in everything in this world. Although with something like a water bottle, it's sort of very rudimentary expression. So and it's often the case with many young children born without, the preconceived ideas of what the world, what society tells you, this is what's real, this is what isn't real. And it's a gradual programming that everybody on earth goes through. But many children, they'll come through with memories of past lives. My memories of past lives didn't come until probably later, but I knew that this was not my first time around. I did have a strong sense I'd come from another planet, not immediately, but yeah, I just had this sense that Earth wasn't the only planet I'd ever lived on. But yeah, so I think what I'm talking about here is about, the spirit that's in everything. And I just recall as a little child, adults would say I was talking to my imaginary friends, but I know I was often talking with spirits in nature, the elementals. I would talk with them and play with them and communicate with them. I'd be talking with angels and beings. I didn't have like a conscious awareness of the beautiful beings that I was talking to, but in reflection, I believe they were probably, some kinds of ascended masters. Um, but to me, yeah, they were just like angels. That's just that was the touchstone that I had, as the reference point that I had, and I was able to use as a child. They were just beautiful beings that I could trust, that would help me. They were there to help. And also, just to be kind and to sort of help foster my curiosity and my connection with spirit. And this is something that, that never left me. Of course, the world comes along and starts to tell you, it's not real, just because somebody else can't see it or hear what you're hearing, it's kind of, I was told, it's not real. But something inside of me just refused to accept that, so I just forged on, and I wouldn't let go of it. Although um I did tend to sort of not talk about it quite so much the older I became, um just because it was just a bit frustrating, trying to talk about something that other people are saying, no, it's not true. um and I recall also, as I got, must have been in my 20s, or early 30s, something like that. And yeah, I could see ghost spirits and disembodied spirits as well. This was when I was a child too, and that was always a little bit more disturbing. So I was seeing sort of like the darkness as well, seeing that there is a whole world of beings that, of varying degrees, that, they want to harm you in some way or manipulate you in some way. As a child, as a child, yeah, I do recall ghosts, and they actually would physically, move, um, move things and move me, like, in my sleep, and that was always the difficult part. Was like, I'd run into my parents' bedroom and they're fast asleep, and jump on top of them and like, help me, there's ghosts trying to get me, and you know they just wouldn't believe me, and wouldn't let me even just, I'd just have to sort of sleep at the bottom of their bed, and um but there was sort of no real understanding of the terror I was experiencing. But when I was in my 20s and 30s, I do recall having a lot of spirits coming to me and wanting to communicate through me. These were like disembodied spirits. Basically, the basically they were the souls of people who have passed away but haven't moved on to a higher realm to be ready to come back to, so they could re-embody again. They were looking to get communication through, like they couldn't let go of the physical world, and they were looking to get communication through to people in the physical. And I sort of played with, I think you call it being a medium. I played with that for a very brief time, where, and what they would do is they would literally come right into my energy field to communicate through me. And it didn't take too many times of experiencing this for me to realize, like, if I feel really, really drained, really shaken. I'd find it really hard to sort of come back to center afterwards. Like, it was a real sort of almost like a hijacking of my soul body. So I just fairly quickly just decided, like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to have choices on who I let in and who I don't. Um, and But of course, what then happens is, then there's more manipulative, more subtle spirits that try to get involved, like further on, that they kind of trick you. And and so, I did end up sort of going into mental health crisis, which involved, some of these spirits taking advantage of me. But I mean, I take full responsibility. I let them in, and they did what they did. So that's sort of just a simple outline of the, not everything in this world is physical. It's not like, not everything can be sensed with the physical senses. There's more to sense beyond that. And there's the divine, and then there's also, there are varying degrees of dark forces which are looking to, trick, manipulate, harm, and they can be, yeah, they can be, even, even the hearing part. I don't think I've mentioned that. Like, I have heard voices. I often hear the voices of beings, like, light or dark, it doesn't really matter which, but I've heard those voices very clearly. But more often than not, the more I set myself onto, the awakening, truly, the spiritual path with fullest commitment, those voices were coming from, a higher place, really just helping to get me to go forwards. Yeah, and there was just something about those voices where I knew, like, I can trust, yeah. And that's the thing. No one could tell me, like, whether you can or you can't trust. Like, I could explain it to a psychologist or to you, but it's only really me and my own heart where I can know, like, yeah, I can trust that. I can trust that spirit, or no, that doesn't feel so good, so I can, reject that spirit. Um, yeah, and if there's just one thing I'll just add here, that we all, if we don't like the spirit that's trying to communicate with us, and whether it's a harmful or manipulative way, if we just have a feeling like we don't want to get involved with it, call on Archangel Michael. Like, that's just, the go-to. Call on Archangel Michael. There's many other things you can do, but I'm just giving the simplest option, because you need the help of an archangel to bring in the light and to get rid of that spirit for you and give you a break. And work out how, to not invite that spirit in again, because it happens sort of unconsciously. So, there you have it. Not everything is as it seems. There's way more beyond our physical senses.